Okay, thank you so much for that, Kieran. So you guys probably know there's a bit of an overlap with Latin and Greek. The grammars kind of can map onto each other quite a bit, but I would encourage everyone to really take these languages on their own terms. If you are thinking of going on and studying it on your own, the handouts that we'll have uploaded will really help you quite a bit. And that's actually what I want to talk about today is ancient language self-study. I've learned 2 languages from A through to D at Macquarie University, Latin and Greek. But I'm naturally not very good at language learning, actually, even though I'm the co-director of PALAIA and I'm doing a master's thesis on ancient Greek linguistics. I'm not a natural. And something that I struggled with as well was that when I was really getting serious with Greek and Latin, well, what do you know, it was COVID. And I'm someone that really benefits from the physical presence, the teaching environment, the regular contact that you get with your teachers. And I didn't really, that was compromised during COVID. So that's why I want to talk about the why, the which, and the how of language self-study, because I feel like I've encountered all of these in my journey from undergrad to masters, from language novice to someone with a facility in one language and a bit of a facility in a few others. And so first off, the why. Why would you self-study? Well, I kind of hinted at that just before, didn't I? There could be a few reasons. An obvious one is the language isn't offered at a tertiary institute. So we've gone over the 4 languages that are going to be offered in subsequent years here at Macquarie: hieroglyphic Egyptian, Coptic, Greek, and Latin. But for example, up until this year, Hebrew was on the syllabus and it is being cut. This is not a new story. This happens at many institutions for various reasons, due to availability of staff, many other reasons. Languages come and they go. So you might find yourself in a situation where you really want to, or perhaps need to learn a language, but there isn't a course for it at your university, if you're even at university. Another one, big one up there, Akkadian, a glaring omission. Yet quite a few universities don't offer it. It's easier to list the ones that do than the ones that don't. But this is the other reason that I was talking about. Maybe you're not thriving in an official course-based learning environment, or maybe you don't have access to that in the form that you would like. Like for me during COVID, but yeah, I mean, maybe you're just someone who isn't as comfortable in the classroom, isn't as comfortable with accessible materials, that sort of thing. So these are the reasons why you might find yourself setting up your own sort of syllabus for tackling a language. There's another reason. Maybe you just love language. Maybe it's not a matter of, it's a common language that's out there, but your university just doesn't happen to be offering it. It's one that you need for your degree, for your research profile, but there isn't a course for it. Maybe you just want to learn as many languages as you can. So that brings me to my next point. Which language should I self-study? This might be obvious. You might already know. I want to learn Akkadian. Or I know some of the people in the room and online are just very curious and they just want to absorb more languages. Well, my view is this is actually the most important question to answer in terms of before you go down the journey of ancient language self-study. What language am I doing? Okay. Now, there's a neat Wikipedia article that kind of started me off thinking about this, and I've linked it up there. Ancient text corpora. Someone very dedicated has tried to figure out how many words survive of each ancient language. And look, they've given it a good shot. There's a lot of problems with this article, but I think it's a bit of fun. So why don't we, and the reason why I think it's fun and it's important is because this is the most important question to answer, I think, before you start self-studying a language. What is there of it to study? See, if you're kind of like me and the people I like to spend time with, you probably like to talk about features of Bactrian, or features of Sogdian, or, oh, did you know that, Rhaetian Celtic has this one morphological thing it does? Okay, that's all great and wonderful. But at the end of the day, why do we learn language? Sorry, I'm breathing into the mic. Why do we learn language? To read it. And if it's a modern language, to speak it. So my view is the most important question to answer is what that Wikipedia article is having a go at answering. What's the corpora? Okay, what is there for us to read? And so that's what I thought we'd do, because it's been a long night and you guys have been champions, but you're all probably getting a little tired. So we'll play a little game. All right. I want you guys to guess. We're going to go through this quickly, but I want people to guess how many words, according to this article, plus some other, I tweaked it here and there. So this is sort of this article that's on Wikipedia with a few tweaks from me. According to that data set, how many words do you think survive of these languages? We're going to go through them. Okay, so Aramaic. Just throw out a random number. Let's get the ball rolling. Yeah.
10,000?
Okay, I heard 10,000. Any other guesses? Okay, here we go. One thing before we start listing this off. This article had a cutoff point of 300 AD, 300 CE. I don't like that cutoff point. Okay, I'm a late antique social historian along with an ancient linguist. And that doesn't include most of late antiquity. I can hear Madeline as well, kind of groaning under her breath. Why would you stop it at 300? So that is one caveat here. That's why this doesn't include Syriac, which is essentially a derivation of Aramaic that becomes extremely prolific around the turn of the 3rd century CE. So your guess was 10,000, okay, words? Well, it's actually 100,000. Yay! Yeah, not bad. We're going in alphabetical order, by the way. Canaanite, which is kind of an old-fashioned, well, I feel like it's old-fashioned term that lumps together a bunch of Northwest Semitic languages. Here, I've put together Hebrew and Phoenician. They're actually more closely genetically related than you might think. How many words do we think of Hebrew and Phoenician survive? This is both through textual transmission, aka Hebrew scripture, and inscriptions, etc. Wyatt.
Does that include the words in modern Hebrew?
So this isn't words. Okay, I should clarify that. We're not talking about how big the vocabulary is. We're talking about how many words is in the corpus that survives. Okay, so like if you write a 2,000 word essay in Aramaic, and then an archaeologist digs it out of the ground, that adds 2,000 more words to the corpus.
So
okay?
it includes every time.
Yes, we're talking about how big the corpus is. Yep.
Maybe 500,000.
Not bad, not bad. 372,000. Again, these are very rough numbers. Okay, we're talking broad picture here. Let's keep going. We've got a bunch to get through. Chinese, this includes Old and Classical Chinese. I had to deviate from the Wikipedia page here, and I had to kind of try and find this resource myself. This is going to be a very broad and not a very accurate number. It's including Han Dynasty literature, and then it stops at the end of the Han Dynasty, which is around 300 AD. Of course, Classical Chinese is the language of poetry up until 100 years ago, so we had to cut it off somewhere. How much do we think of Chinese? Any guesses? Yeah.
Chinese is huge,
Yeah,
so I'm going to go with 900,000.
900,000. Okay, not bad. And by the way, this is a character count as well. That's how I've counted this up. 5,700,000. Pretty good. Okay, let's keep going. East Semitic. So that's Akkadian and Eblite. Akkadian. Someone throw me Akkadian. Plus Eblaite. Wonderful Eblaite. Very obscure, weird language if you've never looked it up. All right. Any guesses? Do you think it's more or less than Chinese? Remembering that Chinese is this is a very rough number. I'm not very happy with this number. I want to get this number more. I would expect Chinese is actually much larger than this, but let's go with that. Okay, so people are saying less. Okay, there we go. 10,200,000. I can't whistle, but if I could, I would. All right, let's keep going. Okay, here we go. Now again. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just quoting this Wikipedia article, and it has a very extensive set of footnotes, but I apologize if this is wrong or preposterous, but do we want to have a guess?
It should be about 1.5 million.
Okay, so I've got 6 million.
Yeah. But we question that.
Yeah. Oh, as you should. But I think nonetheless, we're dealing with a lot.
Yeah.
Which is the point I'm trying to make. Okay, this is very broad comparative stuff. A lot. Of course, very difficult with things like logograms, rap determiners, classifiers, like you were just talking about.
Yeah.
What counts as a word, what doesn't? Hebrew originally didn't include the Hebrew definite article. And I got that number and plugged it in, because when you see the Greek one, it has the Greek definite article. So I made that tweak for fairness' sake. But yeah, these numbers are very, very, very. Take them with a pinch of salt. Elamite. Does anyone even know what Elamite is? Oh yeah, well, okay, yeah. Well, whatever it is, there's 100,000 words of it, okay? It's actually quite impressive. Let's keep going. Etruscan. What's the guess for Etruscan? Zero. It's kind of famous for being one of those languages that like there's hardly any of it, right? And we'd love to have more of it. Why?
Maybe 100.
100,000?
No, just 100.
100. Oh, Wyatt had a guess of 100 words of Etruscan. There's 25,000 words of Etruscan that survive. Okay, it's pretty good. Greek. Now, this is actually, I'm as bothered as you are by this number. I'm extremely bothered by this number. And I'm not going to talk about all the reasons why this number is wrong. But basically, it should be way higher than the number you're about to see. But what's the guess for Greek?
20 million?
20 million.
That's insane.
That's insane. 20 million? It's actually 57 million. All right. Yeah. Let's keep going. Hittite. My old friend Hittite. Let's keep going. And yeah, only cuneiform Luwian. Yeah, yeah. Hieroglyphic Luwian is yeah. It's wonderful, particularly the hieroglyphic Luwian symbol for me. It's a guy doing this.
Oh.
And that's like the foot that you mentioned in Egyptian. That's how we know, yeah. Any guesses for Hittite cuneiform? It's 703,000. 700,000 of Hittite, and 3,000 of cute little Luwian there. And Latin. Come on, give me a guess for Latin. Do you think it's more or less than Greek?
A bit less.
Less? Wow, the room's saying less. It's a bit less. 10 million.
Wow.
All right. There's many more languages. Look at that. So many languages we can study. The list goes on. That Sanskrit figure, again, very problematic. It should be higher. There's reasons why it's very hard to count Sanskrit. Sumerian, pretty good. And I think that's all of them. Now, yes, question.
Not even Acadian, like 10 million words for a language pretty obscure and stuff.
Because it's not obscure, it was the lingua franca of the Near East for millennia. It just is one of the few examples of a language that did die. Greek, Latin, Egyptian aren't dead languages, okay? Madeline was just talking now about how it's still a liturgical language. Greek and Latin the same. Akkadian did die, literally. The active knowledge of it was passed on from human memory, and it was the job of philologists and archaeologists to find that knowledge again, which is, we could talk for that on its own for 2 hours. It's wonderful. Sorry, yeah.
You said that the Greek number should somehow be higher. How much higher are we talking?
Millions higher.
Why is Greek so much higher than everything else by like tens of millions?
It's the same reason why Akkadian is as high as it is. It was the lingua franca of a very large area for an extremely long time, and that included Egypt. And anything that was ever written down on papyrus in Egypt had the good fortune of being buried above a water table in an extremely dry area where if you pull it out of the ground 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years later, you can still read the ink. So the amount of written material we've pulled out of the sands of Egypt is mind-boggling. Grace, do you remember the figure for Greek papyri that's currently logged on papyri.info? I mentioned it to you before. It's something like 63,000 individual Greek documents that you can currently look up. I'm going to move on just because the night's finishing, but I'll take questions at the end. This is my favorite language, ancient language. What do you think survives of the Phrygian word count? 10,000. 10,000. 10,000. Does everyone know what Phrygian is, by the way? We've got to fix that in a future workshop. Phrygian survives 1,300.
Oh.
All right. Now, there are very wonderful languages here. Okay. There's Old South Arabian. They're all wonderful. The Shaburagan, possibly the original scripture of Manichaeism, included in Middle Persian there, alongside Pahlavi Parthian inscriptions we can read. Look at Sumerian. But the point is that what I recommend is if you're going to ancient language self-study, is you pick one of these languages with a large corpus. Can't believe I'm saying this out loud. Don't pick Phrygian. All right. And one other thing about this list is it's fairly comprehensive. As rich as it seems, there are languages that I had to leave out of there. I had to put Old Norse up there because if Trevor was still in the room, he would castigate me for ignoring Old Norse, although all Old Norse survives after 300 AD, so it didn't make the list. Pali literature, it's too hard to find the numbers. Pali is essentially like a late form of Sanskrit. Sorry for that gross simplification. Same thing with Sangam literature. That's the poetry of the old Tamil language, the Dravidian language of South India, very rich tradition. There's tens of thousands of poems written before 300 AD, but I couldn't get a number. Texts written in the Kharoshthi and Brahmi texts. These are actually the first Indic languages written down from about 3 BC through to the medieval period. It's scripts that record various different languages, but it's a very large corpus. We're talking tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of words. There's tens of thousands of words of Meroitic, the old Nubian language. We're not sure about that. That language is currently being deciphered, and so that word count as well, we can't quite get to it. There's also there's tens of thousands of documents of Cholti, the ancient Mayan, the classical Mayan language. Again, because of the script, word count is hard to find. And also here are just some notes about how I came to some of these numbers. Yes, Latin and Greek figures come from online databases which prioritize transmitted literature. They don't include inscriptions and papyri. Greek and Latin papyri and epigraphy is thus not counted in this figure. Both Greek and Latin should be millions of words higher. Yeah.
Later facsimiles of extinct texts included in these counts.
Not for Greek and Latin, because they consider the manuscript tradition to be one exemplar per. So for example, there's Homer, and then there's the Homeric Scholia, but there aren't every individual version of the Iliad is not counted. For example.
I guess what I'm asking is, say you have a text that has not survived, but a facsimile has survived. Is the facsimile counted? Is it counted in the extinct text place?
It would be if the facsimile of it, like for example, an inscription that's being, a squeeze of it is being made, but the inscription is lost. Yes, it would be like that. Yeah. Okay, so you've got this PDF. These slides will be sent out, but really that's it. Okay, I listed a few languages there that I missed, but it was a few slides, and we got through all of them. And many of those languages, when we're talking 10, 20. Like really under 100,000, I would say even under 500,000 words. When you're looking at learning that language, you're not really looking at learning a language, you're looking at learning the linguistic craft of deciphering fragmentary corpora. Okay, you're learning comparative linguistics, you're reconstructing grammar. That's not what this workshop is about. So in your own time, go back and consult that list, and I would say anything that's 500,000 words or up, consider learning for self-study. Now, so I've picked a couple of the languages on that list, for example. I learned Greek and Latin here at uni, but then I've gone and I've applied myself to Hittite in my own time and developed a bit of facility with Hittite. And I've also studied Bactrian, a Middle Iranic language, quite a bit. And a lot of Phrygian. And so I've kind of dipped my toe into all of these stages. And what I've learned that really there's 6 things that you need to know when you're studying a language on your own. All right, these are the things, and this is the thing that you need to kind of think about before you even dive in. All right, so each language is going to have a corpus. We've talked about that. All right, that's the first thing. Okay. So you pick a language that has a big enough corpus, and then what's the orthography? So you've already met that, the wide varieties of that tonight. There's Latin, which is written essentially with the same alphabet we have. Greek, which is written with another alphabet, but one that is recognizable to us. Coptic, which is written using that alphabet, but then which has innovated new symbols, or really has, what I learned tonight, carried on native Egyptian symbols to expand its alphabet. And then you've got hieroglyphic Egyptian, that was mind-blowing for me. I mean, that is, so you see, you got to think about what's the challenge? Is it Latin, probably the easiest on the list in terms of orthography? Or is it hieroglyphic Egyptian? Okay. Vocabulary, Grace talked about this very eloquently. How big is the vocabulary, all right? How many words am I going to need to try and get across in order to get basic reading for this language, okay? Sanskrit is notoriously difficult for that. Syntax, Latin syntax, like Kieran was just talking about, particularly with medieval poetry and things like that, the word order is bonkers, okay? Greek syntax, actually, the word order is quite friendly. There was that purpose clause that Grace read, you know, I sent a message in order that he would come. Same word order as English, okay? Morphology. Okay, so there was that thing Grace said about how one Greek verb can have over 200 different forms, right? How many forms can an English verb have? Most of them, 2, all right? You know, kick and kicks, or kicked as well, 3. Either way, we're under 10, okay? This is something that you need to think about in terms of, okay, how am I going to handle this? Finally, the tools. What kind of resources are out there? All right, so now we're running out of time, so we're going to run through. Let's pick a language from our list. Yes, the second best language after Phrygian, which is the best language. All right, very good. So this is something I did. And so I cracked Theo van den Oudt's The Elements of Hittite. My wife gave it to me as a wonderful Christmas present, I think it was. In the introduction, Theo lists in detail the corpus Hittite. Look at that. This is what we have. And I thought, you know what? I want to read all of that. That sounds great. What's hippology? Personal letters. This is the stuff that I really get excited about. That's actually what I really love in ancient languages. But we also have historiography. We have legal texts. We have a lot of religious texts, myths. Okay. So there's another language I recently had a little sniff into, and that was Tocharian. And I did that same. I checked the same thing. What survives of Tocharian? And it's almost, with one exception, it's basically Buddhist theology and philosophy, all of which exist in translation in other languages as well. It wasn't quite riveting enough for me to commit to learning that incredibly complex language for years. Okay, that's just my taste. This is more my sort of thing. So that's the first thing you want to look at. Then the orthography. What are we dealing with? All right. So Julia treated us to hieroglyphic Egyptian, and well, yeah, Hittite's written in cuneiform. And so that was the next thing I came up against. My goodness, am I going to have to learn cuneiform? Oh my goodness. Well, the good news is when you look into it, particularly when you start with the corpus, you realize, well, yes, the cuneiform is there. It's the original. But virtually the entire Hittite corpus does exist transcribed into what we call broad and narrow transcription, which is essentially they take the cuneiform signs and they render them with their phonetic or logographic equivalents. You can engage with the Hittite corpus before you learn the Hittite, and I say the cuneiform. And I say that because I still think everyone should learn the cuneiform if they learn Hittite, and I'm slowly picking away at it myself. But again, we're talking about obstacles to learning, okay? Is the cuneiform an obstacle to learning with Hittite? Well, actually, no, it turns out we can start getting stuck into it before that, right? So for example, this would have been written, Anita, we don't know how Dumu would have been written, but Anita, Pitana, Logal just means king, oh God, king. Kushara, Pibima, Netish Zashta, Ishkuru Nani Ashush Eshta. All right, so we can actually start hearing the sounds of the language fairly quickly. I expect that with Egyptian hieroglyphs, you would want to commit to a course that will help you with learning your signs and learning this incredibly rich and wonderful writing system, because the cuneiform is sort of like a gateway to the language. But as we just saw with Julia's talk, the hieroglyphs are so intrinsically related to meaningfully working with the language, right? So these are the sort of things that you're trying to answer when you're going through these steps. Step 3. How big is the vocabulary? Well, Jan Koevel's Hittite Etymological Dictionary has been in the works for like 30 years now. Volume 10 is out in 2017 and it's still not complete. They've made it up to S. So what does that mean? Vocabulary is potentially tricky with Hittite, but Hittite is an Indo-European language, like what Grace was talking about. And so there are things there that can help us. For example, the Hittite word for offering, shipanti. The Greek word for offering is spendor, spend, shipant, okay? These are actually related words. Or the Hittite word for water, watar. All right, I wonder what language that reminds you of. So again, we're dealing with the pros and the cons, okay? Now, this is the craziest thing about Hittite. This is the hardest thing to learn. It's the syntax, actually. They have these things called clitic chains, which basically mean that they do these funny things where the start of quite a few clauses in Hittite starts with a little word written nu. And nu, much like deh, for those of you who done a bit of Greek, it's a bit like how we use so or like in English to start a sentence, but we don't write it down, it's informal. Well, in Hittite, they wrote that down, but not only did they write that little connecting nu down, but they then attached every kind of temporal adverb, preverb, particle, conjunction that they thought they might need in that sentence to that connecting nu. So for example, here, the kan is connecting to the verb hapushansi, meaning offer is the verb hapushansi there. This, by the way, translates, and so we offered again the old ritual for old Ishtar. And you've got some Akkadian in there as well, that I'm Ishtar. But so the kan there is saying offer again. We resumed offering. But it's all the way at the start, nukan, and so resumed, and then you've got to go to the end until you know what they resumed doing. So that is not like English. It's a bit like Greek. Greek has these little words it likes to put at the start of clauses, but it's very un-English. And yes, also, this brings me to one other tricky thing with Hittite. Notice that we have Akkadian phrases, that's the italics, capitals there, and then we have Sumerian words, which is the non-italicized capitals, the shishkur, there as well. So that kind of goes back to vocabulary, that, okay, I'm learning Hittite vocabulary, but also I kind of need to learn a bit of Akkadian and Sumerian. So this is the thing that I still struggle with the most. Okay. Morphology, we're pretty much out of time, so I'm going to just rough through this. But basically, those of you who were listening intently to the Greek and Latin, you'll notice that, okay, it has a lot of similarities, because yes, it's another Proto-Indo-European language, I should say. Let's start with the verbs. Well, compared to Greek or Latin, it's actually pretty friendly. 2 tenses, present and past. 2 moods, active and passive. 2 numbers, singular and plural, no dual, unfortunately. 2 voices, active and passive. 2 moods, imperative and indicative. And I actually left it out there, but it's also only got 2 grammatical genders as well. Not 3 like Latin and Greek. So that's actually easier. Let's go to the nouns. Well, there's more cases, up to 9 cases in Old Hittite. In the later stage of the language, New Hittite, it goes down to 5. So really, from my perspective, I've dealt with Greek, I've dealt with Latin, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, it's not so bad. Not so bad. And then what are the tools? Okay, so this is what I'll finish on. When you guys are thinking, I want to ancient language self-study, these are the 6 things that I've just run through that you need to know about the language before you self-study it, all right? So you'll remember that was the corpus, which we talk so much about, all right? What language do I pick and how much of it is there? The vocabulary, the syntax, the morphology, the orthography, the writing system, very important. And then what tools are available for you to figure all of this out with. So actually, even though I list tools last, it's kind of the first thing that you need to do. You need to figure out what's a good grammar, what's a good course book, what's a good lexicon, and what are good online resources. 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the things that you're all going to need. You're going to need a good example, not a good, you're going to need a decent, satisfactory example of each of these to self-study. Okay, a course book, you might think it's enough. They always simplify things, all right? Theo van den Hout's Elements of Hittite is a wonderful course book. It gave me a lot of the information to answer those first 5 questions, but there are things it leaves out. Wyatt, who's in the audience today, recently asked me a question about Hittite online, and the answer to that wasn't in Theo van den Hout's course book. Course books, by necessity, leave out stuff so you can learn the language. So you also need a grammar, all right, that you can refer to when something isn't in the course book. Obviously, you need a lexicon as well, for the same reason you need the grammar, right? When words that you encounter in your reading aren't part of the basic vocabulary that the course book introduces. And online resources. Anyone who pretends that they can go to a broch in the Highlands of Scotland where there's no internet connection, no electricity, and just apply themselves to language using a textbook and paper and pen in the 21st century without instinctively trying to pull out your phone and reference something online, okay? I think you're probably delusional or you're an extremely impressive person. this is how we learn today. We use online resources, we use digital resources. Google will help you just start searching, start bookmarking what you think looks like a good collection of resources to use. But this is the most important thing, and this is why I put it last. The fifth thing you need is a secret weapon. Okay, and the secret weapon to ancient language self-study is community. All right, that kind of hypothetical situation I threw up before about going to a remote location and teaching yourself a language. It's very romantic, and I think maybe we think, yeah, that's really what I got to do. That's why I struggle with all the distractions at uni. I just got to sit down and I got to just apply myself, and I just need no distractions, and the language will slowly open up to me. That has not been my experience. My experience has been that you need other people that are struggling with the language alongside you, and you need people who are further along in the journey. That can be someone who's a year ahead of you, that can be someone who's 1 degree ahead of you, or that can be someone who is 30 or 40 years of continuous study ahead of you who now has a career in the field. It all kind of comes to the same thing. So when I started really getting into Hittite, after I read Theo van den Oud's introductory passage, and I'll finish on this, I started watching YouTube videos about Hittite, and there was, I don't want to put names on the slides, but there was one particular Q&A, like a vlog, a podcast that a philologist was having online, and he had a guest on who's an expert in Anatolian languages, and this was a recent video. It was only a few months old, and I thought, wow, that guy's really eloquent. And at one point he said, yeah, this is my website, and I looked up his website. After the podcast, the video was over, the podcast was over, and I saw he had a contact email. At the time, he was a seasonal teacher at the University of Heidelberg. And so I thought, oh, okay, I'll send him an email just asking him a question about this thing at Hittite that I'm curious about. Didn't expect him to get back to me, okay? And I'm a bit strange. I send emails out to people in the wild. I recommend you do it if you can find an email address. Give it a go. They might get back to you. And he got back to me. He got back to me with a different email because he actually got appointed to a position at the University of California, LA, as part of their Indo-European Languages program. He's a tenured professor there now. And he just answered my question. And what I did was I took that little bit of information he sent me, and I got as much work out of it as I could. I didn't want to sort of strain the friendship. And so once I got to a point where I needed to ask another question, I sent him another email, and he invited me to an online discussion group. So if you try and find community, you will get burnt. You will hear people, you will hear crickets. Send emails out to tenured members at universities. Don't harass them, okay? And that's why I'm not putting any email addresses on the screen. Respect other people's time. But if you can come up with a cogent and concise question about the language to ask them, even if it's just, can you recommend any discussion groups? Can you recommend any reading groups? Can you recommend a good place to start reading? You'll be surprised who gets back to you. And that's the start of your secret weapon. That's the start of your community, okay? Find a community of like-minded people that are on the same journey and figure it out together. It will reinforce your learning. It will motivate you when you despair. And it might even help you make the decision earlier on, maybe I should do a different language. In my case, though, it just made me double down on Hittite. All right, so that's it for my talk about ancient language self-study. I hope you found that useful.